Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf It. Today we're starting a new parak and a new volume of Art Scroll number 2, part Nazir, Masech Nazir, Daf Lamed number 34, and the new parak, the sixth parak of Masech Nazir. But first we have to finish the fifth parak, so let's finish the fifth parak. The Mishnah says, we'll start from the Mishnah in the middle of Lamed and Aleph. The Mishnah says, Ra es hakvi. He saw a kvi. I'll make it easier for you. I'll tell you what a kvi is. Even though a lot of people are confused. It's a buffalo. The Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo. Buffalo is a city. It's also Bills, Buffalo. It's a cross between a wild animal and a domesticated animal. So it's a suffix in halacha whether a buffalo is considered to be a wild animal or is it considered to be a domesticated animal. The two differences, right, in halacha, because the chaylev, the forbidden fats, only apply to a behemoth, not to a chaya. And there's kisay adam, the mitzvah to cover the blood, right, only by a chaya, only by a wild animal. There's no mitzvah of a behemoth to cover a blood, only by a chaya and oath, a bird and a chaya, and then you cover the kisay adam. So those are the two nafkaminas. So you see a kvi, I'm already nazir shezeh chaya. He says, I'm making myself a Nazir on the assumption that this is a wild animal. Now, we don't know. The Torah never was machriya. The Torah never decided. One day, someone will have to prove it. Harini Nazir shezeh eno chaya. Second person says, I'm a Nazir that is not a chaya. Harini Nazir, a third person says, shezeh behema. I'm a Nazir that this animal is an actual domestic animal. A fourth person says, Harini Nazir she'en behema. It's not a behema. Harini Nazir, a fifth person says, Harini Nazir shezeh chaya o behema. I'm a Nazir on the assumption that this is both a chay and a behema. We had a shita, or Belezer's shita, is that it's birya b'fnei atzmo. It's a combination. Already Nazir, a sixth person says she'ein zel lo chay v'lo behema. It's neither a chay or a behema. It's something completely new. Well, really, this is the idea that it's birya b'fnei atzmo, not a chay b'fnei atzmo. The previous chay and a behema, it's somehow both, right? It's not a suffix, it's a both. So the seventh person says, Harini Nazir she'echan michem Nazir. He says, I'm a Nazir on account of one of you. The first six people are Nazir. The eighth person says, one of the first six people are not Nazir. That I'm only a Nazir if none of you are Nazir. The ninth person says, I'm a Nazir if all six of you people are Nazir. And all six of them are Nazir. Again, this Mishnah follows Beis Shammai that says, obviously, if the Tanai is not Makuyim, nonetheless, he makes himself a Nazir. Hektish Batos is considered hektish. The Gemara says, Tani Chada, one brisa says about our Mishnah, Tisha Nazirim, 9 Nazirim. There's 9 people who take Naziros in our Mishnah. But Tani Idach, a different brisa about our Mishnah, says Tisha Nazirios, 9 terms of Naziros. So Bishlam of the brisa says Tisha Nazirim, going to Havi Gavra Tfei, the Itfis Va'azal Pei, right? Like explain the Mishnah, there were 1 through 9, they all said different things about this buffalo. If the Mishnah is only talking about one person, how do you find in a Mishnah, how do you explain the Mishnah that there are 9 terms in Naziros? It's not. Right? Meaning, instead of 6 people, there's one person. He's saying, I'm a Nazir, there's a Chai. I'm a Nazir, there's not a Chai. Right? He takes, every time he takes a new Naziros, a new 30-day Naziros upon himself. You add 6 together. The last 3. Right? How do you find that it's possible? Right? It has to be a person. It can't be, right? He's taking in zeros about the last 3 cases. The 7th, 8th, and 9th person are taking in the zeros about the previous 6 people. So if it's only, we talk about the first 6 people, it's only one person. Who are the 7th, 8th, and 9th person? So Amar Sheish is going to Amar Harini Nazir v'Nazirios Hakol Alai. He says, he basically says, I'm a Nazir, right? On the first 6 terms in Naziros are depending on what he says. Is a chaya or not a chaya? The Naziros hakol alai, and then he says, about the other terms, about the last 3 cases in the Mishnah where he says, Hareini Nazir she'echad micham Nazir, Hareini Nazir she'en echad Nazir. He's not talking about people, he's talking about the terms of Naziros, right? If their Naziros wasn't a skabel, the Naziros were accepted or not accepted, right? So the seventh, eighth, and ninth cases are not people, right? Right? He's saying, I'm a Nazir if one of the terms of Naziris was accepted, or any Nazir, or I'm a Nazir that none of them were accepted, or any Nazir if they're all accepted. So they're all accepted. So he's talking in reference to his previous six declarations. That's what he's saying. The first six declarations are about the buffalo, and the last three declarations are about the terms of Naziris that he previously accepted upon himself. Hajan Allah Beishamai Uslichallah. Fifth parak. Let's start the sixth parak of Maseches Nazir as we go forward. Shlosha minin asurim ben Nazir. There's three types. We've mentioned this before, but here's a Mishnah which says it explicitly. There's three things that a Nazir is asur, forbidden to partake of a tuma. He can't be matamel amesim. We'll learn exact which tumas ames. V'atagalachas. He can't shave his head, cut his hair, or shave his beard. Vayosim and agefen. Anything that comes from the grapevine, whether it's grapes, whether it's wine, whether it's grape seeds, whether it's peels. Anything that comes from the grape, as long as it's food, right? For example, the grapes, the seeds, the pits, they join together. However, it has to join together to eat a kazayas. The kazayas, normally for share of isurim in the Torah, is a kazayas. So if I had grape peels and grapes, and according to one opinion, even if you eat the leaves or the vines of grape, it all joins together for a gazayas, for achila. Now, what about shti? What about drinking wine or drinking vinegar? We'll see. Even vinegar is maybe a problem. Mishnah Rishona, on the top of Lamed Aleph is Mishnah Rishona Omeres Ashi Isha Ravias Yain. You have to drink. Right? When it comes to achila, the share is kazayas. When it comes to shtia, the share is ravias. Ravias, according to most opinions, this is Moshe Feinstein, 3.3 ounces, or Grach Noth, around 3 ounces. Ravias is triple the amount of a gazayas, right? It's 3 gazayas in Ravias, right? Obviously, you measure it by volume or liquid, but it generally equals about 3 gazayas. Rabbi Akiva said the Mishnah Rishon is not the correct interpretation. I feel shara pito b'yayin. Even, I'm going to explain it the simple explanation, the way the art scroll and the Mepharshim explain. You dipped your bread in wine. Now, I don't understand this. Maybe in the ancient days they used to dip their bread in wine to make it taste better. I think it's kind of disgusting. It's something like my kids would do. My 4-year-old, my 3-year-old, my 2-year-old kid, they would put their food in wine or their drink, and they like to make their food disgusting. I don't understand why people would do this, but this is the way the art scroll explains it. Right? He soaked his bread in wine. Right? And now his bread, right, obviously became enlarged because it's soaked with wine. So then the shear of the wine is a kazayas, meaning the volume of the bread expanded by another kazayas. So then you're chayav for eating, because now it's achila. It's not, even though it's wine, the shear is because you're eating it, so therefore the shear is a kazayas. The start of kazayas is chayav. That's the halacha. And even Ben Sion, I have a new revolutionary pshat. What does it mean, shara pito vayayin? It does not mean that he dipped his bread in wine. That's disgusting. We'll talk about what that means in even Ben Sion. Technically, you can be chayav on each of them by themselves. Grapes by themselves. Chartzanim, we'll see. It's machlokas both chartzanim and zagar, but the accepted opinion is chartzanim are the grape seeds, and the zagim are the grape peels. If they atzman, meaning a kazayas of grape peels by itself. Right? You don't have to join together. You don't have a specific combination to join 2 grape seeds and 1 peel. We'll see in a second. This is stated to argue on the next opinion. If you want to be chayav for eating grape peels and grape seeds, it says ad chartanim v'ad zag. The Torah says chartanim is plural, zag is singular. So you have to eat specifically 2 grape seeds and 1 zag, and presumably it has to equal a kazayas, the share. So Nazir ben Azariah is mekel. He says only in that instance can you combine chartanim and zag. It has to be specifically that amount. Elohin chartanim, elohin zagim. What's considered the chartanim? When the Torah says chartanim, what does that refer to? And what's considered zagim? Chartanim elo hachitzonim. The Chartanim are the grape peels. The Zagim are the grape seeds. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Yossi says no. Shalo tite. Don't make a mistake. I have a mnemonic to help you remember. Kizug shel behema. Zug, zag sounds like zug. Sounds like the bell that sometimes you wear around the animal's neck, a cow's bell. Hachitzon zug. Right. The outside one is called a zog apnimi inbal. The bell, right, that's ringing is inside. So zug, right, that's the way you call the bell, the entire bell. It really refers to the outside of the bell, right? The inbal is the little piece that rings the bell, but the outside of the bell that gets rung, that's called zag. So therefore, zag in the Torah refers to the peels. The outside, charsanim refers to the grape seeds, and that's the accepted opinion. The Gemara says, "Shlosha minin asurim ben Nazir atuma hayos ben agefenin." The Gemara says, right, you're forbidden from eating anything which comes from the grape. So it specifically says that Yosef and Agefinin, something which comes from the grape in Gefen Atzmolo. To actually eat the grapevine is not a problem. You would not violate any Isurim. Masis in the local Rebelezer, our mitzvah is not like Rebelezer. The sign of Rebelezer, Omer, I feel Allah and love. And even if you ate grape leaves and grapevines, mashma, you would still violate if you ate the share of a kazayas. Ikad Amri, last say, but some say the opinion of Rebelezer was quoted on the end of the Mishnah. Eno chayav al shiocham and anavim kazayas and anavim. You're only chayav until you eat a kazayas from the grapes, right? We combine all the things together to form a kazayas. Anything that's edible combines to form a kazayas. So the Gemara's medayik, mina novimin, the Rabbanan in our Mishnah say from the grapes, yes. Me'agafen atzmo. It's only things which come from the grapes. But the vine itself, no. This is the luck of Rebbe. So you see here from the Mishnah, it's not like Rebbe. The Tanya, even if you ate the leaves and the grapevines, that also combines to make you chayiv for violating hiyotzim and akef and nazirus. It might come ifli. What's the machlokas tanakam and Rebbe? Rebbe darish ribuy yemuti. He darshans with riboy and miyat. We'll see in a second what that means. Riboy means inclusion, and miyat means excluding something. Rabbanan darshi klali prati. The way they darshan the Torah, it's a big machlokas. We've seen many places. How do you darshan? What's the general way to darshan the Torah? You darshan the Torah through using a system of riboy and miyat. Riboy means extra words to include something. Miyat means the Torah uses a specific word to exclude something. Klali prati, right, is the way the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan darshan klalu prat. I mean, klal is a general concept, and prat is a specific concept. And usually the way it's used is klalu pratu klal. Right? Eno kala kena prat. Right? When you have a general rule and another general rule sandwiched around a prat, a specific rule. So basically, you go with the specific rule, but you include a little more. So there's different ways of darshaning. We'll talk in the coming topic more about explaining these different ways, these different schools of thought, how you darshan the Torah, how you expound the Torah. Lezer usually subscribes to Riboy and Miyut, and the Rabbanan subscribe to Kala Prati. Lezer darish Riboy and Miyut. Miyayin v'sheichar yazir. The Torah says yayin v'sheichar. Yayin is regular wine. Sheichar is either beer or aged wine, or it would include vinegar. Right? Vinegar is wine that sours. Miyetz. So that's specific, right? That excludes something, right? Mikol shayasa megefen hayayin. Kol is right, very inclusionary term, right? Anything you can think of that is related to a grape or a grapevine, riba. So that includes something. Miyad veriba. So what do you have? You have first a miyad, an exclusion. It says something specific, only to exclude something. Veriba, and then you have something inclusionary. Riba hakol. So when you have a miyad and then followed by a riboy, the way we understand that in the Torah is you include everything. My riba. So what are we including? Riba kol mili. We include everything. My miyad. We have to exclude something because yayin v'sheichar is excluding something. Miyat shabishta. So the only thing that the least similar thing to yotzem and agefen is the woody part of the branch, right? A grapevine has, the bottom part is more woody, and then you have the grapevines which are, easier to break closer to the actual cluster of grapes. Those things would be a violation in Israel, but the bottom woody stem, that would not be. And therefore, Rabbi Ezra says that if you ate the leaves or you ate the top part of the grapevines, you would be chayiv. Rabbanan darshan klali prati. Rabbanan darshan the pasuk and klal prat. Miyayin v'sheichar yazir prat. Yayin v'sheichar is specific. Mikol asher yaseh migefen hayayin klal. That's a general type of rule. Mekartanim v'adzag. Now they darshan the next words in the pasuk. We'll discuss why Lezer doesn't include these words. Chartanim v'adzag. Chartanim v'adzag. Chazer prat. It's basically a prat uklal, and now chartanim v'adzag is something specific. Chartanim, like we said, according to Rabbi Yossi, means the seeds. V'adzag is the peels. Prat uklal uprat. Now, usually the way it is klal uprat uklal. Here it's the opposite. Prat uklal uprat. We'll see. Basically, you darshan it the same way. Prat uklal uprat. You have to dan el kena prat. You darshan it, anything basically similar, not exactly the specific mentioning, but similar to the specific. Ma prat mefurish pri upsoles pri. Just like the prat, the specific is a pri, the fruit. Upsoles pri, the waste of the fruit. Both things. I've called pri upsoles pri. So therefore, anything which we can identify as the fruit or the waste of the fruit is included. To exclude, obviously, the leaves and the vines themselves, because those are not the fruit or a waste product of the fruit. We'll see exactly what a waste product of the fruit in a second is. So there's the mahaprat mefurish pre gomer. So versus maybe I'll darshan it a different way. Maybe I'll say prat, the specific, is actually the complete fruit. I've called pre gomer. Maybe I'll only include something which is pre gomer, a complete fruit, meaning not an immature grape or not a decrepit grape or something like that. Amart imke, and if you'll say it like that, if you'll say that the prat just meant to say a pre-gomer, a completed fruit, right? So what is the Torah leaving out? Shelo amro. Anavim lachem yeveshim haksivi. If you'll say it's talking about to exclude, right, moist grapes or dried out grapes, it said, right? It says Charzanim madzag are the peels of grapes, even though they're dried out. Yayin v'chometz. If you'll say that's coming to exclude wine and vinegar, haksivi, it says yayin v'shechar. So those are written; those are included. So therefore, we don't say that the pradukal pral tells me it's a pre-gomor. Ela kalashon rishon. We said we darshan the pradukal prat the first way, which is anything which is a pre. Upsolis a pre. Ma'achar shesafani l'rabos kol davar. After we have this klal, this general rule, where presumably should include everything. What do you accomplish, right? Ke'ena prat, specific, right? Similar to the specific. Whenever you have a prat uklal, right? We start off prat uklal, miyayin v'shechar yaser, and then it's call yotzim me'agef and yayin. So that's a prat uklal. You can't say it has to be exactly the prat. The klal come to include something that the specific prat would not include. But then we have another prat, right? We had like by Nazir. So if it was just prat uklal, so we would include almost everything, probably even maybe the vines themselves. Now we have a prat afterwards. So therefore, it tells us that only something which is the fruit or the waste product of the fruit, but not the vines or the leaves. Amar, so we're quoting from this brisa. Ma prat mefurish pri upsolis pri. I've called pri upsolis pri. What is pri? Pri envy. Pri is the grapes themselves. Psolis pri mahi. What's psolis pri? Chometz. It's the vinegar, right? If you let the grapes dry out. So therefore, vinegar is included. Af kolpri, what is kolpri included? Mahi goharki. Goharki is young, not ripe grapes. Af kol the psolis pri mahi. What's we including? Right, we're including even the psolis, anything that's included in a waste product degree. Mahi amarav kahana. So you invade dechrein. Invade dechrein are basically wormy grapes, according to the article, or grapes that were burnt by the sun and dried out by the sun. Va'adzag. What does that tell me? Amaravina. Right? Chartzanim va'adzag. The word va'ad, the Gemara is darshan. This is something we haven't darshan until. Va'adzag. What does it teach me? Amaravina. La'asui de ben abenim. Right? We know that if you eat the chartzanim, which are the seeds, or the zagim, or the grape peels, what if you just ate the pulp, meaning just the thing between the seeds, right? There's the edible part between the seeds and the peel. What if you ate just that without eating the seeds and peel? How do you know you're chayav? That's why Ad tells you. Amar Amar. So we're going to quote the brisa again, and we're going to ask questions on it. Ima prat mefurish pri gomer, av kol pri gomer. Right. The prat. It says maybe you'll say the prat is not a pri upsolis pri, right? The fruit and maybe a waste product of fruit. Maybe it means just a completed fruit. Av kol pri gomer, and that's all we're including. Amar timke ma'ini yachal kasav mashmo. You can't say that. Because what did the Torah exclude? Shalomru anavim lachem yeveshim. If you'll say it come to exclude, right, moist grapes and dry grapes. Haksiv yayin v'chometz. It says yayin, wine, and chometz, which comes from dried out grapes. Haksiv hayin lechal kalashan achron kalashan rishon. You have to say, like the first language, that the pradukal of prat tells me pri upsolis pri. Now we're going to include everything. Mata lomer mechartani me'adzag. Lomer l'chal kol makom shedam moseh prad v'chlal yeta rasha l'moshcha l'dono kena prad. Elanasa klal moseh l'prad. If we just had a prad and klal without the third thing, the prad, we would say the klal basically includes everything, right? Ad sheyir for l'chakosav kederech shapira l'cha b'nazir mechartani me'adzag. Until the Torah comes and says another prod, a third thing. It had the prod, klal, and now we have the third thing, the prod again, mechartani me'adzag, to tell you that it's a prod klal uprad, similar to a klal uprad uklal, and therefore we include only things which are similar to the prad, to the specific, a little more than that, right? So therefore you include not just the fruit, but even a psolas of the fruit, even something waste product of the fruit where it's either not mature yet or it's dried out. But we're not going to include things like the vine and the leaves themselves. We're going to stop over here. The Gemara is going to ask next on Eliezer ben Azariah, in our Mishnah, who says, Mechartana Mazag tells me that if you want to be chaya for eating the grape peels and the grape seeds, you specifically have to eat a mixture, a combination, a combo of two peels, two seeds, and a peel, right? Chartanim is plural and Zag is singular. We'll talk about it tomorrow, how we fit this into the machlokas between Reb Lezer and the Chachamim, in whether you're chayav for eating the leaves and the vine themselves. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk about the Mishnah, something interesting in the Mishnah about drinking. Drinking wine has to be the share of Vias. However, if you, right, Rabbi Akiva says, afilu shara pita v'yayin, even if you dipped your bread in wine, and there was a kazayas, right? Let's say the piece of bread was 4 kazasim, and then you dipped it in wine so much, and now the bread expanded, it's 5 kazasim. So you have a kazayas of wine, which you're eating, and the share for achila is a kazayas, should be chayiv. According to the Mishnah Rishona, it has to be revius. It's never a possibility of having with wine a kazayas, but Rabbi Akiva says no. Now the problem with this is that there's no such who dips their bread in wine. The Gemara talks about this many times, but it's very confusing. Is this the ancient minhag that people used to do it? I don't know. My 2-year-old kid, I have a 3-year-old, 4, and a 3 and 2-year-old kid. The 1-year-old baby, she doesn't dip anything. But the other 3 kids, they dip their food in their drink and make it disgusting, and they just do it for fun. But no one would eat such a thing. It makes it disgusting. So what are we talking about over here? And secondly, the second question, right? Let's say it is that you soaked your bread in wine. I mean, really, you should be, ikar v'tafel. You shouldn't be chayav at all, right? You have bread and you have some wine that's in your bread, but the main thing is the bread. It tastes like wine, so why are you chayav for Nazir? We'll try to answer these questions. A new pshat, Ashara Pita B'Yayin, Ian with Ben Sion, coming up next.